In partnership with Drop D Podcast Productions and Neapolis Media, this is the Lone Gunman Podcast with your host, Rob Clark, where research comes shine and miss comes die. Stay tuned. Be right there.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the show. This is episode number 181 of the Lone Gunman Podcast. It is your boy Rob Clark with you, and today on the show, we're going to be getting into Jack Ruby. And out of 181 shows, I might have only done maybe 2 concerning Jack Ruby, so he deserves a little bit more shine. Why, you may ask? Well, his actions tend to prove that there was a conspiracy. And there's things that he said along the way that support that fact. So let's hear it from Jack Ruby's own mouth. And this is really the one tangible thing that he said that was caught on audio and everybody should really pay attention to. So without further ado, take it away, Jack.
Jack Ruby gave clear clues to his role in the assassination when he was interviewed on camera.
The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives. The people that had so much to gain and had such an ulterior motive for putting me in a position I'm in. We'll never let the true facts come above board to the world.
Now, these people are in very high positions, Jack?
Yes.
Jack Ruby said he would reveal the true story of the Kennedy assassination if he was moved from Dallas to Washington, D.C. for protection. Ruby feared for his life if he testified in Dallas, but no transfer to Washington, D.C. was ever authorized by federal authorities.
Jack, what do you think about the hearing?
I want to correct what I stated before. If he was vice president, remember I said?
He was vice president?
Yes, I did when I mentioned about Adlai Stevens. If he was vice president, there would never have been an assassination of our beloved President Kennedy.
Would you explain it, Jack?
Well, the answer is the man in office now.
So there you have it, directly from Jack Ruby himself, talking about the men who put him in the position that he's in, and the world will never know his true motives for why he did what he did. Now, the official story goes something like this. You know, he felt so devastated for the Kennedy family and Jacqueline Kennedy, and he didn't want her to have to come back to Dallas to testify in a murder trial. This whole story was concocted by Jack Ruby's first lawyer, Tom Howard, and it has since been proven out to be true. Jack lived for maybe 3 or 4 more years after the assassination before he was overtaken by a fast-acting cancer and died in prison. And, there's stories about, secret interviews that he did with different people while he was in prison that have never come out, that supposedly he told the truth about the assassination to. He slipped some letters out, notes to people. And in fact, I came across a note that Ruby had written to Al Maddox. It says, you've known me a long time, and you've known how I've struggled to make my clubs go. Also, Lynn has known me up to this time that I've gotten into trouble. Johnny Crank, myself, and Lynn have been out to dinner many times, and I'm sure they know the kind of person I am. Well, this all adds up to what I'm going to tell you, that I am being framed for the assassination, that my motive was to silence Oswald. I know you think I'm crazy, but keep this note for a later date, and you will know then, now, what I'm saying here. Keep your eyes open, and maybe you'll notice something. And based on Maddox's comments, it appears this letter was written while Ruby was hospitalized. Ruby died at Parkland Hospital on January the 3rd, 1967. So, I mean, it's pretty clear there that he plainly states in this letter to Al Maddox that my motive was to silence Oswald. I mean, it doesn't get any clearer than that. The question is, who put Ruby up to it? We know of Ruby's alleged ties to organized crime and his trips to Cuba. Him reaching out to Robert McCown, Castro's gun runner. His ties to Santo Trafficante and Louis McWillie and several other folks who frequented Cuba. And I came across an interesting article from 1976. And it talks about something that I didn't previously know, so I'm going to share it with you guys here today because chances are you've never heard of it either. It starts off, documentary evidence that Jack Ruby conspired with Lee Harvey Oswald and a third man to murder JFK was found 2 months after the assassination, say no less than 4 Dallas police officers who saw the material. The documents clearly stated that Cuban dictator Fidel Castro had ordered Kennedy killed, and that the 3 did it for Castro, quote, the officers declare. The crucial evidence was turned over to the FBI, which claims it forwarded the documents to the Warren Commission, but at some point it has been mysteriously, quote, lost. Dallas District Attorney Henry Wade confirms that he personally received the evidence from the officers at his home on January 23, 1964. Wade, in turn, handed the documents over to the FBI. But a probe of the Warren Commission's archives show that the documents are inexplicably missing. Deputy Constable Billy Preston of Dallas, who obtained the evidence, read it, and turned it over to the District Attorney Wade, stated, there is no doubt in my mind that the evidence proved a conspiracy. The Warren Commission report states that there was no evidence that Ruby knew Oswald before the assassination, but Constable Ben Cash of Port Arkansas, Texas, who was a deputy constable in Dallas at the time of the assassination and who also read the documents, declared, the papers that Preston picked up contained a receipt for a motel room outside New Orleans in 2 names, Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby. It showed 2 long-distance calls billed to the room. Beside one was the notation Cuban Embassy, and beside the other, Russian Embassy. This receipt was dated 2 months before the assassination even occurred. There was a document among the papers dealing how the assassination was accomplished. I have no doubt that the writer of that document was the third man involved in the killing. It revealed the whole conspiracy, and I believe the writer intended it to protect his own life. He could warn others who knew that if anything happened to him, the documents would be released. It stated that Oswald was not alone in the assassination, and that a .25 caliber gun, it didn't say whether it was a rifle or a handgun, had been used in the killing. The only weapon cited in the Warren Commission report as having been fired at Kennedy was an Italian-made 6.5 millimeter carbine. Preston stated that the evidence consisted of 33 documents packed in a cardboard container about the size of a shirt box and included the document that Cash mentioned, laboriously handwritten in part English, part Spanish, giving accurate details of the assassination. It also recounted an earlier plan to assassinate Kennedy in Wisconsin in September of '63, which was abandoned because security around the president was too tight. It also included newspaper clippings identifying the author of the document, the third member of the assassination team, as a Texas-born gunman who had hired out repeatedly as a professional killer in Mexico. There were notes stating clearly that Fidel Castro had Kennedy assassinated, that the killers were doing it for Castro, Preston stated. The notes also spoke about Ruby and Oswald meeting in New Orleans, about trips to Mexico City, and about visiting the Cuban and Mexican embassies. There was a mention of an airfield across the border in Mexico, and I've often wondered if this could have been the planned getaway field. Preston said the documents included a membership card, number 52, in the Fair Play for Cuba Committee issued to Jack Ruby. The committee was a pro-Castro group, and Oswald is known to have passed out leaflets for it in New Orleans. The papers also included a press card issued to Ruby at a Chicago address by the Daily Worker, a communist newspaper. The box containing the documents was given to Preston after he got a call from a girl he knew who was rooming with another girl named Mary. She said Mary had something Preston should see, and Preston went there, and Mary told him her boyfriend had left her with a file of papers. Mary was an employee of Paramount Pictures, and some of the notes made by her boyfriend were on the stationery of the company. I remember one thing very well. That girl was scared. She told me that Oswald had also spent some time at her residence, which was in a lower-income neighborhood of Dallas. Dallas Deputy Constable Michael Callahan stated that he, too, had seen the contents of the box when Preston brought it back to the constable's office. I saw a message in it about going to Cuba, he said. Also, former Deputy Constable Tom Stocker, Jr. stated, I was there when the other constables were going through the contents of the box. It happened just like they said. Cash said the documents were turned over to District Attorney Wade that same night, and he saw them handed over by Preston to Wade, and Wade confirmed it. I definitely remember receiving those documents, Wade said. I remember the deputy constables bringing them to my home. The FBI confirms that it received the documents, and it claimed it forwarded them to the Warren Commission. Official FBI spokesman William Bill Hayes told them from FBI headquarters in D.C. these documents were filed with the Warren Commission, an FBI report dated February 11, 1964. They are presently in the custody of the National Archives in Washington. A search of the archives yielded the report itself, but no documents. The report, bearing Bureau File Number 105-82555, states definitely the FBI received the documents on January 28, 1964, but they are not with the report, nor is there any reference in the report to enclosures or attachments. Marion Johnson, an archivist in charge of all papers relating to the Kennedy assassination, said, I've never heard of those documents before. Nevertheless, with Johnson made a thorough search of the archives, the missing documents were not found. When they went back to the FBI spokesman Hayes to report that the documents were not in the archives, as he stated, he refused to discuss the matter, leaving wide open the question of what happened to this startling evidence after the FBI received it. Said Preston, we were told at the time that the documents were so important they were being rushed to Washington. Cash added, we knew they were important. I believed that if they had been released, we would have had World War III. When I heard nothing more about them, I figured they were being kept secret for that reason. The Cuban involvement could have led us into a war with Cuba and Russia. And Preston noted, I was surprised when none of us who saw the documents were ever questioned or called before the Warren Commission. Then I figured decisions had been made by the higher authorities to keep the conspiracy secret because of political repercussions. But after 12 years of silence, the deputy constables said they decided to reveal the evidence because of recent congressional probes hinting at a cover-up had encouraged them to finally speak out. Wow. So, we are left to wonder and ponder the authenticity of the contents of this box. Now, I highly doubt that 4 different deputy constables would lie about this box of evidence. The question is the provenance of this box of evidence. As we know, and I have seen firsthand, forged documents trying to link Ruby and Oswald together. In fact, there was one that stands out in my mind that was faked, I think, in 1967, about an incident that supposedly occurred at Mary Bledsoe's rooming house involving Jack Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald getting in an argument and busting up some furniture, after which the charges were dropped after Jack Ruby agreed to pay $50 to cover the damages. It was an official-looking Dallas police report, or incident report. The problem was there was a string of numbers at the top of it, separated by dashes. And when matched to the alphabet, it spells out as phony as it looks. Now, it looked pretty authentic. But whether or not, again, if that is an authentic incident report, somebody added that later to try to disprove it. It's hard to tell. Unless we can find the document without that string of coding across the top of it, we'll never know. And of course, many people tried to link Oswald to Ruby and seeing him in the Carousel Club together, and so on and so forth. It is interesting, about Jack Ruby's ties to gun running and supporting Castro and going to Cuba and things of this nature, and what Oswald was doing in New Orleans. I'd love to see a Fair Play for Cuba Committee membership card with Jack Ruby on it. And, if the stuff that they say was contained in this box were to ever come out, and it was deemed to be authentic and real, they would have had a problem on their hands, for sure. So, it all sounds pretty legit. I mean, you got 4 different cops stating that they saw this evidence and that they were there when it was turned over to Henry Wade. You have Henry Wade himself confirming that this did indeed happen. You have an FBI report stating that they did receive this stuff from Henry Wade, yet the actual box of evidence is missing. It is not in the archives, which tells me that it stopped at the FBI, and this box, whether it was authentic or whether it was contrived, was deep-sixed like a motherfucker by Hoover and company very, very quickly. Because if it's real, you got a big problem. And if it's fake, then it doesn't really matter anyway. So get rid of it. But according to the deputy constables, these things kind of looked authentic, and I wish I could tell you who the third man was. Excuse me. But it doesn't say. It just doesn't say. And Mary, the roommate, never states who it was. But if anybody's got any ideas or heard about this or knows anything else, feel free to shoot me an email at thelonegunmanpodcast@gmail.com, because I'm interested. I'm interested. And there's all kinds of assertions when it comes to Jack Ruby. I mean, he was kind of a weird dude. You know what I'm saying? From the infamous Quick Hits episode and Daryl Garner and Dago, and his assertions of what Jack Ruby used to like to do, and things of that nature. Among living with his buddy George Senator, whatever they were doing. So after Jack Ruby shot Oswald and he was arrested, somebody reached out to the Dallas Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals on November the 24th. Says she received a call from the Dallas Police Department. They informed her that Ruby had 3 dogs in his apartment and requested she have them picked up. She said she later telephoned the Dallas Police Department and told them that she would not pick up the dogs unless they could give her some type of protection. She said at that time they informed her that Ruby's sister was going to care for the dogs and that she did not need to pick them up any longer. This person stated that one of the dogs that Ruby owned was a female German Shepherd, and she knows for a fact he used this dog for sex purposes. She said she does not recall where she got this information, but believes it to be true. This is coming from an FBI report dated June 29, 1964, to SAC Dallas from Special Agent Raymond Switzer. Yeah. So, Ruby and the German Shepherd. Alrighty then. He would just eat it and stuff. The same woman goes on to say that Assistant Chief of Police Charles Batchelor had permitted newspapermen and photographers into the basement area. She said it was at this time that Jack Ruby also came into the basement of the Dallas Police Department. She said in her opinion, Oswald would be alive if Batchelor had not countermanded the order of Chief Stevenson. Further, she stated the shooting of Oswald by Ruby was due to the carelessness on the part of the Dallas Police Department. She said she obtained the above information from a longtime female employee at the Dallas Police Department, but declined to furnish her name. So, at the end of it, it says, no action is recommended on the above, and it is being made as a matter of record only. All right. Moving on to some other fun Jack Ruby facts. This is an urgent FBI teletype dated 12/23/63 to the Special Agent in Charge Dallas from the Special Agent in Charge of Albuquerque. Redacted, re-interviewed at Albuquerque this date. She affirmed info previously furnished regarding homosexual tendencies of Ruby. Her association with Ruby was for a period of 2 weeks when she stripped at the Carousel sometime in 1957. She could not further elaborate on the date. Ruby's homosexual tendencies were discussed openly by personnel at the Carousel, and at that time Ruby had a male quote girlfriend unquote whose homosexual name was Carmen. She described Carmen as a white male, 22 years of age, dark brown curly hair, who painted his eyebrows and darkened his eyelashes. Redacted only observed Carmen and Ruby together on the streets and at the club. She stated Ruby treated Carmen as a typical female date, making affectionate gestures toward him when he lighted Carmen's cigarette or gave him a drink. She stated Carmen was a, quote, faggot, unquote. God. She stated Carmen was extremely effeminate when not in Ruby's presence, but curbed these tendencies when in Ruby's presence. So I guess Jack Ruby didn't like the effeminate gay boy type. She stated Ruby used cologne heavily. States that the only other personnel at the club at that time she can now recall who discussed the matter with her was a female personnel who did a half and half act by the name of Dronia, phonetic, last name believed to be similar to Warburn or Verben. I don't know. This woman, Dronia, worked for a man named Dully, who may have been from Kansas City, but she's not sure. During an interview, Redacted referred to subject several times as Rudy K. When questioned concerning this name, she said she and other personnel referred to Ruby when not in his presence as Rubinkins, a term of endearment, and Ruby K was probably evolved from this term, Rubikins. She stated Ruby threw champagne parties after closing hours, which Carmen would attend. However, Redacted was never invited and could furnish no specific info regarding the parties. She could not recall exact dates, times, or any associations of Ruby other than those set forth above. So, there you go with that. Ruby did not like the effeminate type. Carmen. Okay. Ooh. Alright, next up. And this is, you have to pardon me because this type is very, very small. So I may have a little bit of trouble reading it back, but it's very important. Discovery of file may break open the JFK investigation. And this is from March 18th, 1978, from noted newspaperman Earl Goals. A breakthrough in the investigation of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy may have occurred with the discovery of tapes, documents, and other materials gathered by police but never turned over to the Warren Commission. So this is something different than what I was telling you about before, because these were never turned over. The material was in possession of former Dallas Police Captain Paul McCrackren, who has been subpoenaed to testify before the House Assassinations Committee on March 28th. McCrackren, now a private investigator, confirmed the subpoena after committee investigators examined the police material in his office last week. They asked me why I sat quiet on this stuff all these years, McCrackren said, and I told them, well, no one ever asked me. Committee investigators were described as ecstatic when they examined the material in a cardboard box. We are strictly no comment people, said one investigator when asked about the McCrackren file. If you want any information, you will just have to talk to the people in Washington. A special unit of 6 high-ranking Dallas police officers were appointed by then Police Chief Jesse Curry to conduct an in-house probe shortly after Jack Ruby shot and killed accused assassin Lee Harvey Oswald in the basement of the DPD on November the 24th, 1963. Captain Will Fritz, who had interrogated Oswald for 3 days before he was killed, was not a member of Curry's special unit. Headed by Captain O.A. Jones, the unit quietly ran down leads for several months after the assassination, while the FBI was conducting a separate investigation for the Warren Commission. Jones, now retired, said the House Assassinations Committee has not contacted him. He said the final report and all tapes, documents, and other material accumulated during the probe was turned over to Curry, whom Jones thought passed it on to the Warren Commission. However, no mention of the police probe or its results were made in the Warren report or the accompanying 26 volumes of supplementary reports. Curry said Friday he didn't really know if any material from the probe was ever sent to the Warren Commission. Curry, who has not been contacted by the committee, said, "I don't remember what all was sent up there now." Police Captain Jack Revell, a member of Curry's special unit, said it surprises me that the file didn't reach the Warren Commission. He said he has talked to the House Assassinations Committee investigators on 3 different occasions and told them he could not help because I have nothing to support or disprove your allegations or whatever you're thinking. This McCrackren file contained tapes of continuous police radio dispatches on the day of the Kennedy assassination that appear to be more complete than the transcripts of those tapes reviewed by the Warren Commission. Police radio tapes supplied to the Warren Commission reflected its minutes of unintelligible notes from 12:20 to 12:34 p.m. Kennedy was shot at 12:30 p.m. Revell recalled that he submitted a request after interviewing Ruby twice in jail. Statements taken from every person in the police department at the time Ruby shot Oswald were included in the special unit file. Revell said in addition to stopwatch timing for the period it would have taken Ruby to walk from the downtown Western Union offices to the basement. Also included in this were the results of polygraph tests given to certain Dallas policemen that were also placed in this file, including tests given Sergeant Roy Vaughn, the officer guarding the ramp the Warren Commission concluded Ruby used to enter the basement. Other leads checked by the Curry unit, some other apparently not available to the FBI or not reported to the Warren Commission, were contained in the McCrackren file. McCrackren, lieutenant in charge of burglary and theft investigations in 1963, was director of intelligence for the police department from 1969 to 72. He was assistant chief in charge of special investigations until demoted to captain in 1972 by then Chief Frank Dyson. He resigned from the force in 1974. McCrackren is the second Dallas area resident known to have been subpoenaed by the House Assassinations Committee. The 12-member committee has scheduled 40 days of public hearings on the assassinations of Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. starting in September. Dallas restaurant owner Joe Campisi appeared Thursday under subpoena before the committee's subcommittee on the Kennedy assassination. He testified behind closed doors. Campisi knew Ruby, who ate dinner at Campisi's restaurant the night before the assassination, and Campisi visited Ruby in jail 1 week after Oswald was slain. Chief Committee Counsel G. Robert Blakey said Friday he can't even comment that he, Campisi, appeared or didn't appear. So, interesting. So we have 2 batches of secret files. One allegedly given to the Warren Commission. One definitely given to Henry Wade. One definitely given to the FBI, but never making it into the archives. And we have one here, the McCrackren file. Apparently, Jesse Curry headed up a special unit to keep investigating the assassination parallel to the FBI's and some of his own internal police officers, because he felt that somebody was responsible for letting Ruby in the basement to kill Oswald. Interesting stuff. Maybe a lot of that stuff Jesse Curry used for his book. Jesse Curry's Assassination Files, or whatever that book was. Because there was a lot of different stuff in there than had previously been released. Now, I came across an inventory list of Paul McCracken's files. And look, if anybody out there knows where to find these, or have gotten them, obtained them from the archives, or they're online somewhere, please feel free to point me in that general direction at the Lone Gunman Podcast at gmail.com. I would appreciate it, because there's some interesting stuff on here. Let's see. The first 3 folders in the McCracken file are Edwin A. Walker, marked 4, 5, and 1. A JFK offense report. A transcript of DPD Channel 1 from 11/22. Xerox copies. And then we have folders. 3 more. JFK Dallas visit. Plates of basement drawing. Rep of LHO's transfer. JFK assassination rep. Quote, evidence. Photos of LHO's property. JFK assassination report. File packet of 2 folders. Plates of Curry's report. 4 folders of trademark diagrams. A list of personnel present in the basement. A JFK shooting, black and white photos. A Saga magazine dated 3/64. A report of FBI evidence dated 11/27/63. An inventory of Jack Ruby's case, not directly connected. Plates of assigned sheets. 2 folders, photos of Tippit shooting. A lab report from J.C. Day. Captain Jones's report. Photos from Ruth Payne's property. Houston and Elm Street Police Department list who was there. A transcript of Channel 2. KILD 364. Photo of LHO route. Final proofs of Channel 1. Original of Captain Jones' report. A manila envelope containing Channels 1 and 2 radio logs. Final proofs, Channel 2. A transcript of Channel 2 from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And a radio log of Channel 1 and 2. A manila envelope of the Eva Grant interviews. Some of this is hard to read. A brown envelope, 3 tapes of originals labeled Channel 2, 10 to 5 p.m., Channel 1, 9:45 to 2:15, and Channel 1, 9:45 to 2:15 again. Radio transcript from Channel 1, LHO basement photos, a yellow box, 1 roll of 16mm film from 11/27/63. Evidence, LHO, Inspector Sawyer. 1 roll, 16mm film. PD detail at Houston and Elm. Master copy of Channel 2. Drawing of the 6th floor of the TSBD. A rifle advertisement. And these items were all stored in one permafile cardboard box. The only thing that I've seen that survives out of the McCrackren file that I've ever seen is the inventory list of evidence. And these are items not listed in the Dallas Police Department inventory of 11/26/63 or pictured on film taken in Dallas field office. One of them is a Maddox camera case, a brown leather holster, an Imperial brand hunting type knife with sheath, 2 Fair Play for Cuba handbills stamped L.H. Oswald, 4907 Magazine Street, New Orleans, Louisiana. A negative bearing Join the Socialist Workers' Party, Fight for a Better World, Write Box 2915, Dallas, Texas. Now that's interesting. Okay, because there's never really any evidence that LHO was doing anything provocative in Dallas, like he was in New Orleans with the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. But they found a negative bearing, I guess, for a handbill that says, Join the Socialist Workers' Party, Fight for a Better World, Write P.O. Box 2915, Dallas, Texas, which I believe was a box that he was using in Dallas. A slip of paper bearing the attached promissory note for a financial assistance loans totaling $435.71 are hereby returned marked paid as a final payment of $106 is acknowledged. Remarks L.H. Oswald, Box 2915, Dallas, Texas. So yes, he was using that box. Interesting. I like the ones that are marked deleted. M deleted, N deleted, S deleted, Y, V deleted, Z is deleted. Name tag of Michael Payne, name tag of Ruth Payne, top of yellow box, stamped inside, R42, March 24th, 55, 2 manila envelopes. And stuff goes on and on and on. A Minox light meter, a pedometer compass self-timer, sunshade hood with a filter, 115 power telescope, stereo viewer, and a pocket knife. 2 Minox cassettes, 1 containing film, 2 containers with unexposed Minox film, 1 negative of Baby and Chair, 1 roll of 35mm film. Now, it stands to reason that if Oswald had Minox film, that he had a Minox camera. Doesn't it? You'd think. Where did he get this? How could he afford it? Medical items listed including pills, Lanscana, Pentids 400, aspirins, Freenament, 7 various containers of pills, some labeled in Russian, thermometer, nasal decongestant, 2 eyedroppers, small container of white powder, numerous envelopes of powder, and bottles of liquid labeled in Russian. 10 foreign coins in a Kodak film bag with the address Corporal Michael Payne, U.S. 511-69740, Headquarters, Battery. The attached list is a correct and an actual count of the items received from the Dallas office on November 27th and delivered personally by Special Agents Vincent Drain and Warren DeBreeze. This list differs from and supersedes the inventory list submitted by the Dallas office. The items listed have been checked against the film submitted by Dallas and against the items themselves since the film was not complete. So, some weird, wild stuff there. Crazy. And a couple other stories that I ran across is that sometime in the 70s when it was being the old Carousel Club was being rejuvenated or redone or remodeled. Somebody else had bought it and was planning on doing something else with it. And the guy was in there working one day, and somebody came in and offered the guy $50,000 if he could, for the place. And the guy turned it down. Apparently, someone ran across a bunch of Jack Ruby's possessions that was left behind at the Carousel Club, including a bunch of things and files that were up in the ceiling of his office. Also left behind was a safe. And they were going to put the safe up for auction. And the guy who was running the auction said that he was going to buy it. He was going to bid up to $300 for it. But the night before the auction, somebody broke in and stole the safe. And the guy said that he had never opened it because, people like the mystery of buying an unopened safe, especially from somebody like Jack Ruby. So the contents of the safe will, unfortunately, never be known. The actions of Ruby that entire assassination weekend, from the time Oswald was picked up, have always seemed very mysterious to me. Yes, several ex-employees had stated that, Jack Ruby was very emotional and impulsive, but you have to understand, things were finally turning around for Jack and his business. He was doing well. He had money. He had, I think it was close to $7,000 in the trunk of his car at the time he was arrested. He had 3 dogs that he loved very much to take care of. He had people that he cared about. He cared very much for his brothers and sisters and his buddy George and all his dancers. And he's going to be so impulsive to somehow get in the basement of the DPD and murder the assassin of the president in front of newsmen with cameras and a lot of cops. Like I said before, it was a suicide mission. Either you're going to get killed or you're going to get arrested. One of the two. For sure. There's no getting away from that. So it's akin to just putting the barrel of the gun up to your head and pulling the trigger. It's a suicide mission. And you don't know how it's going to end. And for somebody to be so motivated to throw away everything in their life that they care about, to do what Jack Ruby did, he had to have some kind of a motivation. And, the story about Jacqueline Kennedy doesn't wash. We heard from Jack Ruby's own mouth at the beginning of the show that the true motives for what he did will never become above board, will never be known. And the letter that he slipped out of prison plainly stated he was meant to silence Oswald. Now, he was stalking Oswald all weekend at the police department, posing as a member of the press even to get close to him, carrying a gun on him, all weekend. But he couldn't get close enough, or he didn't have the balls to just go up and be close enough and pull that trigger until November 24th, on the morning of November 24th. And to me, what he did served a purpose to a higher authority. Oswald needed to be silenced. Sure, people die in jail from, quote, suicide, Jeffrey Epstein. But to have somebody else do it. Somebody that's not a cop. And, but, you have to remember, Ruby was in a unique position because he was friendly with a lot of police. They were always welcome in his club. They were always treated well. Free drinks, food, free entry, and he made himself a buddy to a lot of cops for good reason. He ran a shady business, a seedy business. He was operator of a strip club that served liquor. He was in a unique position to know people on the force, to be able to get into that basement, and to be able to squeeze his way through the press and squeeze that trigger in Oswald's gut. Now, Earl Ruby, his brother, always said later after talking to Jack that, Jack never meant to kill Oswald. He just wanted him to suffer. That's why he shot him in the gut and not the head. But I believe it's because Jack was too much of a pussy to see what happens when the gun goes against somebody's head and you have to pull the trigger. It's much easier to shoot somebody in the gut than it is to shoot them in the head and have to live with that vision and those memories the rest of your life. Because as far as I know, Jack Ruby never killed anybody before Oswald. It's a big decision to actually go through and pull the trigger and kill another human being, regardless of what they've been accused of doing, before they even get their day in court, before people even know what the hell's going on. Because at that point, you're talking about it's been one full day after the assassination. And yeah, you've got some scattershot information about Oswald, but it would appear that Jack Ruby knew a little bit more about Oswald than he should have when he corrected one of the fellow newsmen who was referring to the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. He knew Henry Wade. It's just insane, the connections that Jack Ruby had. Somebody got to him. Either he was part of the conspiracy from the get-go, or made to do what he did after the fact. Either way, I think he acted on orders one way or the other, and that he was threatened in some form or fashion, one way or the other, either with threats to himself or threats to his family that he held dearly, his sister, threats to do whatever, who knows. But that's just what I believe. And the interesting evidence that just happened to disappear, could have helped substantiate a lot of the claims over the years and the mysteries involved surrounding Ruby's actions that day. Well, that's all I got for you today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you are checking out Quick Hits, a JFK News and Notes podcast I do with my buddy Doug. We're 18 episodes in. You can listen to it wherever you listen to this show. Just find it. It is called Quick Hits. Make sure you subscribe. And you're checking out the Dallas Action. You can listen to that wherever good podcasts are found. And also, head over to tpoc.com. That's right, the Neapolis Media Group, my buddy Carmine. You will find a plethora of information related to and regarding the assassinations and political intrigue and covert intelligence operations. Till next time, folks. Peace.